Dun, dun,
Oh,
dun,
I
dun.
forgot the noisemaker. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Office 365 Pulse. We have a rather large update this week. As we expected, the in development section is huge this week after Ignite. So we're going to first go through the official roadmap updates. These are the items that have been added to the roadmap. And then after we get through all of the official updates, we're going to have Adam, who was graciously able to attend Ignite for us. He's going to go through and talk about other updates he heard while attending. So we're going to kick it off with Tom talking through some of the updates that are now in development. Now, remember, in development means we are back in Redmond. We're the sausage making, the secret sauce, eating of the dog food, drinking of the champagne, all of those things, getting them ready to come to us and our tenants. And so most of these were probably announced at Ignite, maybe shown off in DemoWare, but these are all of the things that are in the works for us to be getting soon. So go ahead and kick us off, Tom.
Okay, there are a ton of things to select from, such as my leadoff item, which is Microsoft and Teams updated added team to a site wizard. So it's one of those things where I've seen that before. If you create a group enabled team site and you don't have a team associated with it, you can't add that team. But now what they're allowing you to do, if you're within the SharePoint site when you do that, it's going to be it appears that it's going to be bringing over mini dashboards, pages, news, links, stuff like that. And you can select what content in the SharePoint site that you want to add in tabs in your team that you're creating. And I think that's kind of cool in the fact that if you want to start having that single point of reference for your site and you want teams to be that, you can now make the team workspace experience more closely mirror what it is that you're going to be doing and seeing in the actual SharePoint site, rather than you have to try to go out and add things later on. This is nice that's having you set that all up at once, which is cool.
Save people clicks. Save them clicks.
Really.
If don't teach them how to do something and be like, now you have to go do 6 clicks to get this to come over here. Just do it for them. They won't.
And there's one other one that I'll touch on here before we go to the next person. I've also noticed that they've got an entry now where in OneDrive and Teams and SharePoint, the file upload limit has been increased to a whopping 100 gig for a file upload. Again, I think that's conceptually really cool. And if I ever catch my users uploading a 100 gig file, I'm going to have a serious talk with them. Because I can just imagine the network is going to hate that, or they're going to time out. And yeah, but it's nice seeing that we now have those bigger files, especially if you're doing CAD, some things like that have really huge files involved. You're going to be able to accommodate those now. So that's
and the other thing that's kind of tied to that, being able to upload large files or just being able to do files in general, is team sharing integration with OneDrive. So now internal to Teams, I'm going to be able to share files, so that great OneDrive sharing experience that I get, so I can configure sharing links and different things that I can do there. I'm going to get that same experience inside of Teams. So getting more of that, I don't have to go to different places and get a different experience. The same is the same no matter where I'm at. An apple is an apple. An apple's not an orange. That's a great experience for my users. So that's a good one. So that's another one that's kind of coming from that files experience. I know they're working really hard to make a file, and whatever I'm doing with it, it's the same and it's consistent, and kind of keeping that back end. A user shouldn't know, am I in Teams, am I in OneDrive, and I am SharePoint. It just doesn't matter. I'm working with a file. And so they're improving that experience as well. So I'm excited about that.
Along that same vein too, when they announced the increased file size, they said you can have, I believe, up to 2 million site collections per tenant now too, which
yes,
God knows why someone needs 2 million site collections, but if you do, you can have up to 2 million site collections.
If you're bumping up that 500,000 limit right now, guess what? We've got more for you.
A fourth of the way to go, Tom.
Oh, that's great.
So I'll do one before we go really deep into SharePoint and Teams, because let's be real, we're going to go really deep into SharePoint and Teams in this update. This is one that I thought was really cool, that when I saw it announced is like, oh, that makes complete sense. So they basically are taking two different security related apps that exist inside of the Office 365 suite and taking a functionality that existed in both of them and combining it to make a better experience. So basically, Cloud App Security has been able to do a good job around detecting shadow IT for a long time. That's one of the features that is attractive to people with Cloud App Security, is you can go through and by analyzing the logs of your users' computers, figure out what applications they're using that you're not sanctioning. Well, they're basically taking that functionality and combining it with Microsoft Defender ATP. And what you can now do is actually sanction those apps, where you can basically, or go through and, not sanction, sorry, block access to the unsanctioned app. So say I've decided I'm rolling out OneDrive, I'm going through and I have all these files and I put the security settings I want in place on there. But through Cloud App Security, I've known in the past that certain people are using their own personal G drives, or maybe they're using Box or something. I can now combine that with Microsoft Defender ATP and basically say, I no longer want them uploading files from their work computer to Box or to G Drive or something like that. And it will actually, through those two applications together, block them from doing so. So really cool to see. When I saw this announced, it was kind of like, oh, wow, that's something that you would have thought they had already, because both of the side pieces of functionality were there. But I think for a lot of organizations that are in the process of transitioning to the file experience in Microsoft, this is really cool that you can literally stop people from using the stuff you don't want to be using, which is kind of nice to see. Like, I'm sympathetic to shadow IT, because oftentimes with shadow IT, it's users going through and doing something when you are not providing the tools that they need. But I think in this case, when you have the insight and you are giving them tools, it's just about protecting your corporate data, which is pretty cool.
Very cool.
That's good stuff. Cool. Tom, did you want to talk about home sites?
I was going to say you could if you wanted to, because I know that's been a big thing on your list.
Oh, I thought you were using them and you wanted to talk about them.
Didn't you have a story about it, Tom?
Well, that was the site swap, but
I'll cover both of them. Go for them, Tom.
I'll cover home site. What the heck? So this is something.
Down.
Yeah, come on down. You're the next contestant on who's going to talk about the SharePoint enhancement. So the home site thing is something that they have talked about, and they originally talked about it in the SharePoint conference back in May. And everybody's like, yeah, this is really great. And so you say, well, what's the difference between a home site and a regular site? It's really similar to the fact that you've got a communication template and you've got a team site template. Well, now you're going to have this home site that you can work with. And it's going to give you additional features that are like right out of the box, what your homepage is going to look like. So you're going to have, what is it? The home site features let you designate a communication site as the home site, makes it more discoverable, automatically sets up for organizational wide search. And that is a cool thing because it seems like search in the past has been a little bit more focused on individual site collections. And if you're going flat structure, you got a ton of site collections. This will be a nice way to be able to say, hey, this is your home site. This is the top of your intranet, and it's going to give you that single stop shop for everything that you want to have them see when they first come onto your intranet. So I'm really excited about that. And I think this also ties in a bit to some of the additional web parts that they've had now that you can do, like the side vertical column and things like this. So you can now present a really appealing homepage to your intranet, where before you could do some cool stuff with the communication site, but you didn't quite have that overarching ability to call that one site the homepage for everything. So looking forward to that quite a bit.
I am too. I remember in May when they announced it and they would say home sites. And they're like, well, what's the difference between a home site and a site? And they would say superpowers. And you'd be like, what the heck are you talking about? Now I feel like they've defined better what the superpowers are. And I'm like, oh, that legitimately makes sense. Now we can work with it. This is really cool. So I'm excited to see kind of that continue to develop. And some of the stuff you can do with intranets now is just fantastic with what you can do with SharePoint out of the box. It's just no longer the month-long projects it used to be. It's kind of get her up and get her done. It's fantastic. I love it. So
yeah. And it's
Very
that's
cool.
kind of cool for us too, because we're nearing the end, yay, of our SharePoint migration from 2010 to SharePoint Online.
Now you get to do an intranet?
Yeah, well, we've kind of been looking at that all along, and there's been a project for redesigning the homepage of our intranet. So this is going to come into play for some of that, and we're going to have that home site ability
Awesome.
to be able to make that, then possibly with a combination of the site swap that we'll talk about a little bit later, make that come into play and give the superpowers to the people who actually run
The homepage too, like the home site, whenever you're creating it, not only is it aggregating stuff up from the tenant and giving you that common landing page, but as you'd come to expect for what Microsoft is doing, it's also curated to the user. So it's not going to expose to them stuff that they don't have access to and stuff like that. So you're building this common landing page, but the idea is really it almost becoming like the centralized place that they can aggregate information that's relevant to them on the SharePoint, almost like I didn't really want to use this word because it means something else, but almost like their own personalized hub site that pulls in everything that they need from SharePoint. And I just think that's a really cool thing that, as you said, I can know when I'm dealing with people that are better with SharePoint than I am. So when I'm talking with Jim, when I'm talking with Tom, it seemed really common right now that maybe you'd put together a communication site that you'd make a hub site and that would kind of be your landing page maybe. But I love that this experience of the home site is really more not only just about information with your company, but it's really curated to the user, which I think adds a ton of value to it.
It does. It does.
Well, cool. Well, I've got one that nobody would expect me to talk about, and that is the public preview of the Fluid framework for Office 365. I know. Don't tell anybody. I went to a dev kitchen and I had a blast. It was a lot of fun. I learned a whole lot. I did not write any syntax or semicolons. I sat in between two developers and instructed them on what syntax and semicolons they should write for me. But we had a blast. It was great. So when you think of it as a framework that's fluid between all of Microsoft 365. So lets you bring together Office, SharePoint, Teams, To-Do, Planner, lets you kind of bring everything all together and piece it into these applications that you can build. And then, maybe I'm building an application and I'm doing things, and then I push a button and all of the things I've been doing go back to all of the little places that they live. And so it's a great tool and a great a framework that you can build custom applications. So when SharePoint will build you 90% of what you need, or Office 365 is going to build you 90% of what you need, but you need it to act 10% different, now you have this framework that's going to let you build upon everything else that's there. And so I kind of saw it and I laughed. I actually said, this feels like InfoPath for developers. And then I laughed because it's not. It's totally not. But it lets you build together little components like that and pull them together. It's much more than that. I'm not truly a developer, but as I was sitting there listening and looking at the applications you could build, it was a great experience. So I enjoyed seeing that. I enjoyed being at the dev kitchen. So I fully encourage developers to go out and look at that and start looking at the Fluid framework, start seeing what it will let you do, look at the public preview, look at the end user experiences, start seeing what you can do with it. I think it's going to open up a whole new user experience of maybe not simple apps in terms of development, but simple apps in terms of user experience that are going to just provide a ton of value, everyday value to your users. So I think you're going to be able to get really quick wins using that Fluid framework. So I think it's something to watch.
One of the sessions I was at, the way they showed this off that I thought was really cool, they basically had just a quick video clip showing it, but it was basically a table that had been created that they had in Word and OneNote and Teams chat and converted into a graph in Excel. And as they went through and adjusted the values on the table, it updated in all four places simultaneously, which was great to see. And the other thing too that they specifically pointed out was because they have this framework going in, like everyone knows how like you're going into Word and you have a table and you slightly adjust it and then your whole spacing of the Word document's messed up. And they showed that like it was much more fluid, almost like you'd expect how OneNote would work, where it kind of adjusts stuff and like doesn't have the same problems. And like that's how they demoed it off, is basically they have this one common thing that's now sitting across all of those apps, but rather than being an element that's shown in all those apps, it's literally the same thing that's displayed there, and made it really cool how seamless it was between them.
Yeah,
And this
it
is
was
going to,
really great.
I was going to say, this is going to be one of the things that once we get completely done with the migration at the end of this year, it's high on my list of look into this, because I hadn't really heard about it or known what fluid meant. To me, it was like, oh gosh, is this another, framework like React or whatever, and I've got to learn code? And yeah, right. And then when I finally
Well,
read
you
what
will.
the description, well, I will, yeah. But when I read the description, it's like, oh, that looks interesting. And I agree. I think it's really going to change the game when it comes to the things that you can stitch together to
Mhm.
present that unified experience. Almost like I can easily build a dashboard pulling in data from 8 or 9 other sources, and when those sources change, I don't have to worry about updating the dashboard. Dashboard
Yeah.
updates automatically.
Now let's redefine easily. A developer,
Okay.
a developer, right? Like, let's get the right skill track in there. A developer, so someone who's a .NET developer, someone who knows React, someone who knows, like, so it's a tool for developers. It is a full-on developer tool. It's not meant to be the typical Tom and Jennifer tool. So it's not a drag and drop. As cool as that would be, you could totally do it. That's not. I don't mean you can't. I just don't want our audience to get confused and think it's like it's
This
not
is
meant
more
to
of an
be like a
Adam's
Power
audience
Apps or something
tool.
like that. It's more of a Corey tool or something like that. So it's a developer, but you could learn it, but it is based on React and all of those.
Okay.
Syntax and semicolons and all of those things I didn't like, but I did love the end results. They were great.
So I'll go ahead, and so we're going to have a ton more SharePoint and Team stuff, because that's where a lot of
it's
updates
crazy.
came through. So before Jennifer and Tom get in their little vortex of awesomeness, I'll go ahead and mention for you guys, they actually have a lot of cool stuff coming out with search. When I went through and heard them talking about search and kind of read what's coming on the roadmap, it's really cool when you look at where they're planning on taking search with what it can do. Some of the updates in the roadmap this week are very specific things. So I want to mention what that is, but talk about the bigger picture of what they're doing with search too, because I think that ties it together pretty well. So they're doing stuff like they've done optimizations into search to make it work better with natural language capabilities. So rather than it being this prescribed thing where you need to put exactly the words you're looking for, it's using stuff like Cortana and AI to be better understanding what the user is trying to ask and have better understanding of where that's coming from. That's something that's coming out like right now or this month that people should be able to see. They're doing better scoping around what you're doing with search, where it should have more flexibility than, okay, I'm just going through. You can say, okay, well, either confine the search to these team sites, or as Tom said when we were talking earlier, make it all of SharePoint and make it all of the tenant. And one of the things that I really like too when you're looking at it, clearly what their goal for search is long term is they are trying to get a competitive edge, because what they're doing is they've refined their search capabilities for Bing too to make it better, and it's supposed to be a better search that you're doing online. But clearly their vision of where search is going is you can have the power to put search into your applications that are either already there for 365 or talking about like a fluid framework, going through and integrating search with stuff you're custom building, and you'll be able to leverage not only what exists inside of your tenant that you can scope and curate the way that you want, but you can also leverage the internet. It's like the next step for them is you will have one search that not only searches the internet like you would with Google or with traditionally with Bing, but also searches the scoped area that you want inside of your tenant. And the idea is this is really going to bring what users are doing and what information is coming to their hands to the next level, because you're really going to be able to empower them to really get the information they want. This will become even more relevant. We're going to go through and talk a little bit more at the end about like an additional application that they're building inside of 365 too. But when you're looking at where they're going with search, it's basically bringing in the world of a traditional Bing search, or, for me, a traditional Google search is how my head thinks, with a targeted search so that you can either be everything in your tenant or can be the information you want to expose in your tenant, and marrying those together in one centralized place, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, I think that's going to open up some additional things, because we've been telling people, oh, search is so much better in SharePoint Online than SharePoint 2010. And then they go to try something in SharePoint Online and search, like, well, it doesn't work the same way. Yeah, they're getting there. So I'm happy to see that they're finally now surfacing a number of the things that are going to make search a better experience for people in the SharePoint Online environment, on top of what they already have out there. So that's good. I think I'm going to go ahead and step in with a couple here before I let the vortex of awesomeness descend upon Jen, and she can talk about SharePoint lists and libraries because that's her baby. A couple things here. Microsoft Whiteboard integration and SharePoint Teams. They're actually going to now integrate those two things. And I think that's awesome. We've had a ton of people go, well, I want to use a whiteboard in my Teams workspace. I'm like, yeah, not quite there yet. So now they're going to be able to do it. And you can just select it via the share tray and off, you're ready to go. That is really nice. I'm looking forward to that. This is something that we've talked about in the past, but you'll also be able to, I'm sorry, I'm switching to Microsoft Stream now. You'll be able to easily personalize videos with your Stream mobile app, and it will accept annotations, it'll do text, it'll do emojis. So again, that's going to take you to the next level in terms of being able to do real-time videos that you can then distribute to the company or your team or whatever the focused audience is without you having to be at your desk in front of a webcam and doing everything there. If you've got the phone, you can publish to Stream. That's real awesome. Then the final one
with your emojis.
With your emojis, yes. That is going to be so bad. I can just tell it right now. The last thing I want to talk about is voice enhance. This, I think, is really cool. Much like the blurred background that you see behind me, or don't see as the case may be, voice enhance is going to eliminate those background noises. So again, it focuses people on what is the person saying instead of going, what is all that construction noise in their background? Or, you know, how come I keep hearing the coffee machine in the background? Stuff like that. It's going to be, here's the person speaking, here's going to be the main focus, because we're going to try to eliminate a lot of that background noise for you. I think that's really cool. And again, it will help the whole videos and meetings if you're not in what would sound like a very unprofessional setting to do these. I think that's going to be a really cool thing.
I love it. I love it. I'm so excited. Yay, the vortex of awesomeness.
Here comes the list.
Let's talk about SharePoint lists and libraries. So the first one we have is expanded list. So if you've ever been looking in a SharePoint list and you got this itty bitty space and you're like, well, darn it, I can't see everything. Well, now there's going to be this magic button and you push it and it goes whoop and you can see everything. And so it's an expand button. So you can expand your list. And so it gives you the full screen. So you have more real estate to see your list. And so it's a one click. It's going to clear it, make it go back and forth. So super excited about that.
What sound does it make, Jen?
It goes whoop. I'm sure the sound, I'm sure it's got that sound. All right. So excited about that.
The expand icon that you see in Teams.
Yes.
Your workspace area. You click that icon, it gets rid of the side navigation. You see a fuller screen. Click it again, it goes back to the normal settings. So.
And I probably will make that sound every time I do that. Just like I made a superhero noise about deploying the features every time I deployed a new feature in the previous versions of SharePoint. I had a customer and that did that. It was just great. We made a motion and everything. I might be a nerd.
Does that sound one more time just so we can work on it?
Yep, there you go.
I think it's gotten higher pitched every time it's come out. Too.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I start trying to open my mouth and my body goes, nope, you're not hitting that note.
It'll get cold enough soon and you can. All right. And then the next one is we have document libraries. So how many times have people wanted to customize the forms in a document library? We're talking years now, guys. I think as long as SharePoint has been in existence, people have said, I would like to customize a document library in SharePoint. And then they always get the same answer. What answer do we get? That is great feedback. And we're going to really listen to what you have to say. This year, they finally told us yes. So in development, we have the ability to customize that inside of Power Apps. So that is coming soon. It's in development now. We also have Card View. So Card View is going to be a new formatting. It lets you tailor your document libraries and list into the little cards that are there. So you get the little card view, you can do all of that, but it's going to let us customize it by dragging and dropping column headers and putting what we want there. So a customized card view is going to be fantastic. That's going to let Betty in accounting and Karen in finance do what they need to do without having to go to IT, customize it the way they need to. It's going to be fantastic. So excited about that. All right, it just gets better, y'all. Then we have conditional formatting, right? Like we get to use rule builders. So, right, if this, then that, to rows and columns based on attributes, right? So rules, we get to say if it's greater than 10, make it red. If it's less than 7, make it green. We get to do all these rules. It's fantastic. We get to underline it, bold it, all of these different things. It's even going to have little icons there. It's just going to be fantastic. The things we can do. We don't even have to leave SharePoint. It's fantastic, y'all. This is just fantastic.
Adam, do you think she's excited about this?
It's so great.
I would like to just note for everyone, just so we're aware, we have not yet hit 9 a.m. when we're recording this, and that's how excited that Jen is.
I'm so excited. All right, guys, there's more. Remember how you used to be able to set a list and say, I want every other row to be shaded, and it would go with your theme, and it would be shaded, and it would be nice and visual and easy to read, and everyone loved it. And then came the modern world, and they didn't like shading, and so they took it away. You know how many times I've asked how that comes back? It doesn't exist now. Now it does. So we get shading back. Tom, okay. I know you're excited about that one.
I'm excited about this, but Jen, you have to read the detail line that's once you're satisfied with how it looks. Once you're satisfied with how it looks.
Dare I say how it pops? No. No.
I still want to be the person who gets to write these detail things.
I think Lincoln wrote that. Okay, we're going to, dare I say how it pops? Okay, that's funny. That's funny. That's great. That's great. I love it. I love it. Okay, another one. Guess what we have, y'all? Connected web parts that interact with each other by consuming dynamic data. I love it. I love it, y'all. My session is back. We are going to be able to build pages that have web parts that talk to each other, that have web parts where we set styles. They're going to look fantastic. We're going to be building dashboards. We're never going to be leaving SharePoint. We're going to be telling stories. It's going to be like it's 2007 all over again. I'm so excited.
How many semicolons will it take to accomplish that?
0. I love it, guys. It's going to be so great. It's the year of the list too. I think that's what they call it. But I am so excited, y'all. If y'all only knew how much I have fought for everyone in the SharePoint world to get these features. I love it. So yes, I'm very excited that all my list features are coming. So yes, all of these list features are coming. I cannot wait till they are here. Adam is going to know when they hit our tenant because he is going to just walk into our working site and every list is going to be beautiful and he's going to just be like, oh, it rolled out.
So, like a light will come down. There'll be like angels singing.
He'll be like, oh, this used to be words and now it's graphics.
So I'll hit a couple security ones and compliance ones because I'd be remiss to the people that care about compliance and security if I didn't.
You're not as excited as I am, Adam.
Well, it's 9 a.m. I'm a reasonable person that hasn't woken up yet. So there's a couple things. So I'll try to hit these simply without going too into detail. So scope for November. So this is one of the things that like it's in development, but like if you believe the roadmap, it's in development until it will be fully launched in the next 2 weeks. But they basically announced the ability to apply sensitivity labels and sensitivity labels with protections as a whole piecemeal to sites, to groups, to teams, to like SharePoint sites, stuff like that. The idea being you can go through and say like, oh, this is internal only, or this is, highly sensitive information, whatever it is. And by applying it to like a SharePoint site, everything in the site then gets that label. Or by applying it to a team, all the documents in the team then get that label. And then the auto protection side of that is basically the same thing, but you can actually add in encryption. So rather than having to go through and say, okay, this file and this file and this file, or you can basically say, okay, well, I have a SharePoint site put together that's for my, finance department and everything that they're doing is sensitive. So I'm going to go through and baseline add encryption to everything that is in that SharePoint site and everything that gets uploaded in the future to that SharePoint site, which is cool. It's very, very powerful, the stuff that you can do. They're even taking it a step further. So by Next year, so this is still a little bit further out, they're actually going to be able to do 2 additional things where they'll do auto classification to where not only can you say, I want everything in the site to be covered, but you can say, teach Azure what the type of information that you're wanting to do and say, okay, well, I care about, finance data. Here's what our finance documents look like internally. And then regardless of where you upload it, Azure with machine learning can figure out, hey, this is probably a finance document, and go through and add that protection again without the manual intervention, which is really, really cool. This gets into some of the machine learning stuff that I love. The final thing that I'm going to mention from the compliance side, next year around Q2, so hopefully by the middle of the year, they're going to start doing information barriers. I know this is one of the areas that kind of, melds into Tom and Jen's world when you're talking about SharePoint. But say you're in the healthcare industry, like, I don't know, someone like Tom, and certain parts of your group can't talk to other parts of your company, where you're now going to basically be able to put up actual information barriers blocking what's going on from group A to group B. I actually saw this demoed out. It's really cool. If, like, say I say Tom and I work together and we're in different departments where we can't actually work together, if I were to try to go in and access a document that Tom's done, or if I even try to go in and chat with Tom, it will actually give me an error that basically says, due to administrative settings, I can't communicate with that user. So really, really cool ways, especially if you're one of the larger organizations that actually need to have those barriers in place, some of the compliance and regulatory stuff that's coming out.
Cool.
I'll pick up a couple more here because Jen probably still needs a bit more of a moment to recover from all the listing. The migration manager
Cool.
is going to help orchestrate and simplify management of large-scale migrations. I need to look into that a little bit more. It's not necessarily going to help us in our case where we're almost done, yay, with our migration from 2010 to SharePoint Online. But I'm wondering if this also may be really good if you're trying to migrate data from one site in SharePoint Online to another, in which case that would be fine. We still use another vendor tool that we are very happy with to do this, but it would be nice to have something in, within the box per se that you can use if, like, you're out of licenses for the other tool and you just need to do something real quickly. It'll be nice to have this. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this rolls out and what kind of things are going to be available with it.
This is some of the manifestations of the Mover acquisition. That's basically what you're seeing here.
Oh,
when Microsoft bought Mover, that's what you're seeing with this.
Okay, very cool. And then they've also got one in development, which is root site swap. Try that.
Yay!
And that is where you can, like for us, we had our SharePoint root site was the typical, hi, I'm an admin, I can blah, blah, blah. Just the typical company name.sharepoint.com, but that really wasn't where we wanted people or what we wanted people to see if they went to the root site. Well, now this is going to be able to say, hey, instead of that site being the root, I want this other site to be the root. You use the swap site button in the SharePoint Admin Center. It flips those over to where that new one becomes the root site, and it archives what the old one was along with any subsites, so you don't lose anything in the process. And I think that'll be good for people who originally had SharePoint in their tenant, back in the day, and they really hadn't done anything with it. Now they want to take advantage of that. This root site swap will actually help them get to where they really should be for an intranet type experience. So that's good.
I'm super excited about this.
At Ignite, people stood up and cheered when they announced this.
Oh, I can imagine.
Which, if you did SharePoint conferences, you've been paying attention, you knew this was coming. But like literally, people stood up and applauded whenever they announced this feature.
Nice. What else do we have? There's a new panel experience in the SharePoint Admin Center. So it'll help you manage certain site characteristics more easily. They've got a long write-up on it. Definitely download the PDF that Jen so graciously provides each week with a whole lot of work to get some of the detail, but that will start making it a little easier to work with instead of you having to dig down into various areas. And then this is one
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was going to switch to the other one, so go ahead and talk about that one if you want to.
Well, no. I had a different thing I wanted to mention too, so go ahead.
Okay. And then the other one here for SharePoint Admin, Modern Term Store and Terms Analytic Dashboard. This seemed to get a whole lot of very positive comments on Twitter over the Ignite thing to have this managed term store, modern term store out there. We haven't started using that yet, but I'm looking forward to being able to take certain things like, cost centers and all these other ones that you don't want to develop in multiple sites, but to put them in a central area to where they can be used by various other sites out there to manage it. And I think the fact that you can also get suggestions on what's being used, what's not, what the analytics are, that takes you even a step beyond, I believe, from what you currently have, to where you put something out there and you kind of forget it. Well, now you can see exactly what people are doing, where they're using it. And I think that's going to make the term store a lot more useful in SharePoint Online than it has been up to this point in time.
All I was going to mention very briefly, they announced, because this is going to be relevant to literally my favorite thing they talked about at Ignite that you'll probably hear about at the end of the session, but they basically announced that people cards are going to have integration with SharePoint list and library web parts. That's not coming in the middle of next year, but I'll explain in more detail when we get to the end why I'm so excited.
Adam, that's nothing to do. That's on the roadmap.
Well, the people cards is on the roadmap.
It's the very last item. In fact, why don't you go ahead and jump to that, Adam?
All right, go ahead and cover that one, and then we can go to the next one.
Well, yeah, like I said, all it really means is if you go through and you look at SharePoint list and library web parts, if you hover over someone's name, it's going to pull up a people card. This has contact information, relevant content that you have permissions to see, stuff like that. And like I said, I'll talk more about what the people cards really mean and why I'm excited about that later. But ultimately, I just love that this integration of if someone's name is related to something and like listed in a list or a library and you hover over there, it's going to have that integration, pull that information up for you.
Awesome. All right. I think we're finally ready to move to rolling out. I think this is officially our longest show so far. So now we're moving out to what is rolling out. So these are things that you should start to see in your tenants already. I'll kick us off with the first one. I think the next two sections will be a lot shorter based on just there's not as much stuff in those. But the first one, Microsoft Teams and SharePoint new files experience. So this is just streamlining them. We've been talking about this for a while. They've been wanting to do this for a while. This is just so you get the same list experience that you get in SharePoint inside of Teams. So sorting, filtering, syncing, all of that, that's coming to Microsoft Teams, so it looks like that. So that's one that I'm super excited about. The other one, private channels, is out. So that's one that's coming out. I don't know if it's in our tenants yet, but it's rolling out. So you can do the private channels. Still mixed feelings about that I've seen in the industry. So we'll see where that one ends up landing, but you can now create private channels and set them up so people can have them. So we'll see where that one goes. So I'll toss it over to one of the other guys to tell some of the other things that are rolling out.
Go ahead, Tom.
In terms of the private channel one, I would also recommend that before you start implementing that, you do some searching and reading up on what some of the implications are, because like one right off the top was, let's say you own a Teams workspace and somebody who can create channels within that workspace creates a private one. Use the owner of that team workspace can't see that private channel.
There's a lot of stuff. We've talked about this a little bit before. I'm not a fan of private channels, so definitely research it and figure out what it's going to look like and what you want your taxonomy to be.
I could tell by your two faces when I started talking about it. You two were like so not
We're both admins at heart, and it's just like, no, this is gross.
Yeah, I just, and the fact it creates a whole separate site collection.
That's probably also why they increased the site collection limit
that
to 2 million.
Could be. That is a really good observation, Jen. Hadn't thought about that. You're going to suck up those other 100.
If we're going to let them do dumb things, we're going to increase the limit.
Here's some more rope. Go ahead, hang yourself. The other thing on the first page of the rolling out that I think is really cool, and I need to go back and check and see if it's made it out to my iPhone yet, and that is there's a Play My Emails feature for Outlook for iOS, and it works with Cortana. So when you go into Outlook for iOS, you'll have a button that says Play My Emails, and it will actually read your emails to you, and it will say, okay, you have 4 unread emails. It will take 5 minutes to read those, and boom, it starts reading them. I know you've been able to say, hey, I want to use, voice to have this read out to me. But in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm driving down the road. I'm trying to push all these buttons to get one email read to me. And that probably breaks a whole lot of driving laws in many states now, because focused on your phone and not on the road. Here, you can just push one button and it's going to go through and do all that for you automatically. I think that is a really cool thing. Looking forward to seeing that. Not sure that I will use it a lot on a regular basis, because I don't use my iPhone for emails a lot unless it's just after hours, check real quick,
Right.
see what it is, and go on. I'll read those faster than I'll hear it read off to me. But if you're doing commutes, this is probably going to be a lifesaver for you. Oh, what else do we have out here?
Well, the start page. So this is where, when you're in Office 365 and you go to the hamburger menu and you go to SharePoint, and it's kind of a roll up of everything in the organization, they've made some changes to that in the UI that pushes different content to you. That's actually hit our tenant. I love it. So I actually spend a lot of time there. I do have a role, though, that keeps me across the entire organization. So I spend a lot of time getting into other people's sites and looking for different things. So it's natural to my role to be going into things that aren't my commonplace. So it's a very helpful site for me, but I love the changes. I think have been very natural and very welcome. So the updated SharePoint start page experience has been a really, really positive thing. So that's rolling out now. Quite honestly, I don't think users will notice anything super major there. If they do, it should be a positive thing. It's all good changes. And a lot of white space is gone, and they've streamlined different things there. But that's one that's rolling out now.
Very cool.
Oh, I was just going to say briefly, one of the things that I thought was cool, because I could actually see this in my normal life, they actually have what they're calling Outlook for iOS Up Next. So basically, if you have Outlook on your phone and you have a calendar invite coming up within the next 30 minutes that's marked as busy, I mean, that's key. It needs to be marked as busy. But it will basically put it as a banner at the top of your inbox. I see this. We have a couple people in our organization that travel a ton. I'm thinking of Steve in my head when I'm thinking about this, Jen. So someone who's having to travel around and visit other customer sites and stuff like that, if they have a meeting coming up that they know they need to hit, you maybe not always popping over and checking the calendar directly. So the fact that just looking at your emails, you have a banner at the top that lets you know, hey, you have this meeting coming up, or this busy meeting, this important meeting coming up. I just think that's a nice quality of life improvement.
Yeah, totally.
Microsoft Teams is also in the process of rolling out a feature called Meet Now.
Yeah,
So
I'm
that's
instead
so
of having
glad.
instead of having to go out and schedule a meeting and then invite everybody to it, and you schedule it for right now and it shows up in the whole bit, you can just say Meet Now, boom, no schedule, no calendaring, no fuss, as they put it. It's just, you're in a meeting, and I think that's really great, just to get those ad hoc ones put together.
I
Go
use
for
that
it.
feature all the time, and I hated that inside of Teams, that it didn't
Right.
exist, but it existed in Skype. I'm like, what do you mean I can't meet now?
Exactly.
I hated
Exactly.
that.
I'll cover like the next 10 things. Just
Yeah,
because
I was going to say,
I was
Adam
gonna
can cover
say.
those.
Yeah, just because I mentioned it in the in development. Tons of updates actually in rolling out into search. I already talked a little bit about where they're trying to take search, and you see a lot of that in the rolling out. Just some highlights as you're going through and looking at it. Acronym search. So even if you're doing stuff like you want to put something like the DoD for the Department of Defense. If you put DoD, it will realize that could be the Department of Defense and scale it out for you. Connectors that they're putting through. So if you want to go and connect, the Microsoft Admin Center, the Windows File Experience, ServiceNow, which is really cool, Salesforce, which is really cool. You can put out a connector that then pulls in your Salesforce data into your search for your company. Going through and doing Graph API integration, so you can even code search into the other applications you're building. Doing stuff like industry news. So if you go through, and so again, taking Tom, who works in healthcare, you can basically go through and pull in the industry news and search and only be pulling up relevant stuff about what's happening in the healthcare industry. So maybe, I don't know, if you have a SharePoint homepage and you're wanting to aggregate stuff in for people to see, you could have that integration going through and doing it directly. You can pull in Power BI information. Just there's over and over and over tons of different search stuff. And again, it's all relevant to figuring out the type of content that you want to curate to your users that's targeted, and combining that with a search of what you can do in the internet, which again, like, their whole goal here is to basically make the search capabilities that you have at your users' fingertips and their different applications and landing sites basically as best as they can possibly be. Not only bring in the best from the internet, but bring in the best of a targeted system you want, even going so far as to pull in stuff, like I said, from Salesforce or targeted stuff about your industry. Really, really, really cool. I'm going to actually mention the last one too, because this was my most surreal moment at Ignite. So I went to a OneNote session. I did this because I am doing a OneNote session myself at SharePoint Fest in Chicago next month. I love OneNote. I use it all the time, but that's not my typical cup of tea that I go to at a conference. Like, it's normally I'm doing like the really weird, hardcore technical things that they're doing, right? So I go to OneNote. I met Ben, who's a product owner. He was awesome. We chatted and everything. But literally, this is how everything plays out. So they go through and he's kind of talking, and like he goes to the next slide, and like literally the lights dim in the room, and like this like bassy electronic music starts, and it's this marketing video that they've done to advertise dark mode in the Office suite. And it's like, it reminded me a lot of like the Apple commercials from like 10 years ago, where they're trying to be like sleek and cool and hip, and it's like, you know, again, it's like bassy music's going on and stuff, and you're just like, what's happening? And then like show dark mode. I'm like, wait, they just had this like 3-minute marketing video for dark mode. And then in like the most dramatic fashion ever, like Ben, who again is a product owner for OneNote, like steps up to the microphone, but like rather clearly is texting on his phone, like brings his hand down and hits, and he's like, I have just now told the product team to roll out dark mode to first release tenants so they can do it. And like after his, like I'm sitting there like looking around, like, is this happening? Again, like literally people started like not everybody, but like probably 30 people in the room started like wildly cheering after he said this. And I'm just sitting there like seeing if anyone around me is like taking in the same moment that I am. It was surreal. But that is my story, that dark mode is rolling out for OneNote 2016. As a whole, I use dark modes. I think they're more appealing on the eyes. But it was like literally, it was like, it's happening, guys. And like in the moment, like they literally waited to roll it out, so he did it like mid-session with like the dramatic finger drop, and it was interesting.
Well, from here
That's
on
awesome.
out, Adam, you are going to get to do all the dark mode features.
But I expect music and dancing and all of that.
I really want to find the
music,
video they
yeah.
used. I'll have to go back and find that session and see if they linked to the video, because like it was literally like it was like and like it was just like, what is happening? It was crazy.
Oh, love it.
I love it. All right, well, we're gonna go to launch mode. Adam, we're running out of time, man. Yep. So we're going to see. All right. So launched. Let's be honest. The tools that have launched this time are pretty utility tools, right? So SharePoint Teams, SharePoint and Teams pages and list improvements, they've basically launched improvements so that when they make improvements to, I've just said improvements like 10 times without actually saying what they are. So I'm sorry. They've done things, not improvements, so that when they add features to pages, it works better between the two apps. So those are going to be behind the scenes things, right? So they're making it better for that there. That should be things that we don't even know about, don't even see, don't even care. They're going to load faster. They're going to work better. We shouldn't even notice it, right? So they're making some changes there. They're making some changes with Stream where we can, it's an improvement. They're making it so we can replace videos but keep our URL. I love that one. How often do we send a link to somebody and then say oops and then have to replace it and don't want to resend the link? Yeah, so that's a great one there. Some of the other ones that I was looking at that were kind of utility were different things, like a lot of things are finally rolling out to GCC High. So Cloud App Security, Azure ATP, some transcriptions in some different languages, some of these different things. They're things that we have been talking about for months, I feel like, on the show, and they're trailing into the additional environments. And so that's really what's in the launch category this week. I'll let the guys talk if there's some
SharePoint
other
migration
things.
tool, Tom. I'm sure you want to talk about that.
Yeah, let one of you
they've
guys talk
got
about
one.
that.
They've got one. It's rolled out.
It was
So Nick, do
specifically
you have a
for
SharePoint migration
SharePoint
tool?
Server 2010.
Yes.
That might have been relevant to us 9 months ago. It's
Yeah,
not now.
it's nice that they've done it now that you're completing your migration, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah. 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
So I'll say I have a lot of experience with the SharePoint migration tool. It is not as user-friendly inherently as some of the other third-party apps you may use that I know, for instance, Tom used. But if you leverage this with Fast Track, it can get some stuff done. So if you're an org and you're going through and thinking about doing it, especially if you're in 2010 and you have access to Fast Track, something to explore.
Yeah, definitely. So that being said, I'll post the PDF, guys, if there's anything else you guys want to add to launch, but it's just a slow week for launch.
Yeah.
And then finally under canceled, we do have one under canceled this week. Nothing to worry about though. It's your location choice for your Windows Virtual Desktop service data. Doesn't really matter. They just merged it with another roadmap item. So they canceled an item only because it rolls into another item that's going to be coming out soon. So it's no big deal. That just got blended into another item. So that kind of sums us up. Now, Adam, that gives you a total of 4 minutes to do your update.
I'll actually be real quick. Surprisingly,
Adam, you've never been really quick.
No, I'm going to be quick.
Anything you've done when you're talking.
We will be done in less than 4 minutes. So most of the updates were in SharePoint and Teams, so we were good from there. I wanted to briefly mention Flow got rebranded. That doesn't matter too much, but it's now Power Automate, so everyone be aware of that. The one thing I wanted to mention that was not contained in the update that I'm super excited about is a thing called Project Cortex.
Yes.
Naomi Moneypenny and Chris McNulty are heading this up for Microsoft, but it's basically bringing the power of machine learning and AI into a brand new application that's going to be a new application for 365. Now, this is probably coming out, I believe they're shooting for March of next year. I'm not going to be able to do all of the features justice, so this is really just my pedestal saying please go and research it because it's amazing. But what it's really going to do is it's going to allow you to aggregate internal data on your information that's in SharePoint, that's in Teams, that's in Teams chat, that's in email, stuff like that, and basically build out an artificial information network inside of your system. So say you are working on a project called Gemini, and you have a whole bunch of documents that are related to Project Gemini, and you have a Teams channel created, and you talk about it. It is going to aggregate all that information together, and it is going to actually put that in basically a landing page in Cortex that has all the information aggregated about Project Gemini together. It'll tell you who on your company is going through and working on it, what roles that they have. It'll pull in information whenever you are looking at a document that has the word Gemini in it, and you scroll over that, it'll actually pull up an informational card that gives you that curated information that it is put together through machine learning to tell you what Gemini is. So imagine you're going through and working on a document that someone sent you and it references Gemini, and you're not on the Gemini team. It's literally going to turn into like a hover card that you hover over, and you then get all this curated information about this project going on at your company, assuming you have access to it. On top of that, there's going to be literally a landing page for Project Gemini that even has a network of who's working on it mapped out. You can see who the project manager is. You can see who the engineers that are working on it. You can see who, how you're going through and doing it. And it's basically amazing, guys. This all aggregates up to what they call a knowledge center, where all of the different topic pages for all the different versions of like Project Gemini, Project Diamond, Project whatever it is, right? All that comes up into a knowledge center. But this is basically using machine learning and artificial intelligence to make information matter internally and aggregate it in an extremely meaningful way. Like, to me, this is next level stuff. This is what's going to take the information that people are already putting into Office 365 through the various applications and put that information to use for you. Like, I see this as absolutely transformational for how productivity is going to work for users inside of Office 365. As you get information up into there, it is going to make your users more connected, it is going to make them more informed, and it is literally doing stuff that like I didn't think would be possible a year ago. So like I cannot even begin to tell you guys how awesome I think this is. It's a little Big Brother-ish in the sense that it's doing all this AI machine learning, but when you see the results of what it puts together, it's phenomenal. So that's my soapbox moment.
super excited
Yeah.
about this.
Go through and look at it, get an understanding of what topic cards, what topic pages, what knowledge center is. There's GIFs showing this stuff out that you can see the functionality, but it is
Tom, you need to look at
incredible.
this too. Like, you will
Yeah.
be way excited about this.
Yeah, it's another thing that I saw coming through on tweets and a few Facebook posts. Like, yeah, I really have to get into this, especially when you look at the two people who were kind of pushing that. I mean, they're
Yeah.
both like high-powered, enthusiastic, knowledgeable people. Like, okay, they've got the right team on this, which
Yeah,
means
right.
it's probably going to be pretty cool. And it does sound like a real game changer in terms of getting disparate information that normally, you have to be part of that team to know, and starts putting it out in front of people's faces. And the information is finding them instead of you having to go find the information.
Yep.
For the record, I was done in 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adam.
Ooh, I like that. Drop the mic here.
Thank you, Adam. All right. Well,
Thanks.
everybody, it has been a great show with you guys today. This is officially our longest show. We'll see if we can top it with more updates after the SharePoint conference in May. But we will be back next week with additional updates. But thanks for joining. We'll get this posted to YouTube. I'll post a link to the PDF. And thanks for joining us. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bye, everyone.